This sequel to the 2017 film takes place in 1989. The Losers Club: Bill Denbrough, Jaden Martell, Ben Hanscom, Jeremy Ray Taylor, Beverly Marsh, Sophia Lillis, Richie Tozier, Finn Wolfhard, Eddie Kaspbrak, Jack Dylan Grazer, Stanley Uris, Wyatt Oleff, and Mike Hanlon, chosen Jacobs, gather shortly after defeating the evil entity known as Pennywise, Bill Skarsgård. The losers make a blood pact to return to Derry if they have to face IT again. In 2016, a gay couple, Adrian Mellon, Xavier Dolan, and Don Haggerty, Taylor Fry, are having a good time at the carnival when they are harassed by homophobic thugs. Even as they leave the carnival, the thugs pursue them and begin to viciously assault them. Adrian is thrown over the bridge, and they flee into the night. Adrian nearly drowns until he is dragged out of the water, but the person who dragged him out was Pennywise. Don looks on in horror as the monster clown grabs Adrian and bites a huge hole in his chest. Mike, now played by Isaiah Mustafa, overhears a police scanner report about the incident, and when he arrives at the scene, he finds the message "Come home" written in blood on the side of the bridge. Mike is well aware that IT has returned. In adulthood, we meet up with the other losers. Bill, now portrayed by James McAvoy, is married to Audra, Jess Weixler, and has achieved success as an author/screenwriter, but he is frequently told that his endings are not satisfactory. Eddie, now played by James Ransone, is a risk assessor who is married to Myra, Molly Atkinson, a woman who is as controlling as his mother. Ben, now played by Jay Ryan, has lost weight and is a successful architect, despite living alone. Richie, currently portrayed by Bill Hader, is a stand-up comedian. Stanley, now played by Andy Bean, works as an accountant. Bev, Jessica Chastain, is a fashion designer who is married to the abusive Tom Rogan, Wilbian Brink. Mike calls everyone, and no one recognizes his voice until he mentions that he is from Derry. The phone call makes everyone nervous, and Mike invites them to return to Derry. Bev tells Tom she'll be returning to Derry to see friends, but he's paranoid and suspects she's lying to him and cheating on him after hearing Mike's name. Tom begins to hit Bev until she fights back and flees their home. The other guys begin their journey back to Derry. Stanley is the only one who does not leave, as he commits suicide by slitting his wrists in the tub rather than face his childhood nightmare again. In a flashback, psychotic bully Henry Bowers, Nicholas Hamilton, survives Mike's push down the well and is washed out of the sewers. When he returned home, police arrested him after discovering Henry's father's body and deducing that he had murdered him. Today, Henry, played by Teach Grant, is in a mental institution and has deteriorated further. Pennywise appears to Henry in the form of a zombified Patrick Hockstetter, Owen Teague, who hands him his old knife. The losers reunite at the Jade of the Orient restaurant after a long absence. They laugh and reminisce, but they are also aware of Stanley's absence. They begin splitting fortune cookies, only to receive single-word fortunes that they discover form a full message. Bev's fortune reads Stanley, and put together, the fortunes read Guess Stanley could not cut it. Pennywise has tracked down the losers. The fortune cookies then begin to crumble, revealing hideous little spider-like creatures. The losers bash them on the table, which makes them appear insane to others who see them attacking a table. Bev dials Stanley's wife's number outside the restaurant. Bev knows Stanley was found in a bathtub before she can say anything, and the other guys figure out what happened to him. Everyone gathers at their hotel, and Mike admits that this is the real reason he summoned everyone back to Derry. They question Bev about how she knew how Stanley died, and she responds that she has seen how everyone dies because she was the only one who saw the deadlights when Pennywise kidnapped her. Bill returns to Mike's house, where Mike drugs Bill's water, causing him to have a trippy vision. Mike explains that during his time in Derry, he has studied the history of IT and learned from a Native American tribe about the ritual of Chud, which can be performed to permanently destroy IT. He creates a ritualistic piece of pottery depicting the ritual. They return it to the other losers, and Mike explains that they must collect artifacts from their childhood and place them in the pottery in order to destroy Pennywise. We see a little girl named Victoria, Ryan Kiera Armstrong, at a football game with her mother somewhere else in Derry. A firefly draws Victoria away, and she follows it under the bleachers until she meets Pennywise. He employs the same manipulative trick on her to make her believe he is playful, and he appeals to her sympathy when he laments the fact that he does not have friends, while Victoria is mocked for a birthmark on her cheek. Pennywise promises to get rid of it, only to devour Victoria. The losers gather in an old clubhouse built by Ben for them over the summer, where they all become friends. They discover a shower cap as an artifact for Stanley. A flashback shows them as children, and Stanley asks if they will still be friends as adults. His pals assured him that they would. As they return to their homes in Derry, the gang splits up. Bev returns to her childhood home and meets the elderly Mrs. Kirsch, Joan Gregson. As Bev looks around, she invites her inside for tea and cookies. She discovers an old pack of cigarettes as well as the poem Ben wrote for her, which she still believes was written by Bill. Mrs. Kirsch exhibits unusual behavior as Bev sits with her. Mrs. Kirsch's chest appears to have rotted flesh, according to Bev. She tells Bev that her father has joined the circus. Bev notices what appears to be a human Pennywise in an old photograph. Mrs. Kirsch then inquires of Bev whether she is Daddy's little girl, as her father had referred to her. The old woman is then revealed to be Pennywise, who transforms into a grotesque and monstrous figure and chases Bev away. Before Bev can flee, she encounters Pennywise in his human form as Bob Gray, who is dressed as a clown and scratches the red lines on his face to taunt Bev. Richie visits an old arcade he frequented as a child and obtains a token as his artifact. In a flashback, he is seen playing a game with Henry's cousin, and the bully teases Richie for being a fairy. Pennywise, who claims to know Richie's dirty little secret, then finds and torments him as an adult. He disguises himself as a Paul Bunyan statue and attempts to attack Richie, but he escapes in time. Bill visits an antique store and discovers that his old bike is for sale. He approaches the shop owner, played by none other than Stephen King, and asks if he can purchase the bike. The owner is aware of Bill's work, but agrees that his endings are terrible. Bill gets on his bike and rides around his old neighborhood, past the sewer where Georgie, Jackson Robert Scott, was taken. Pennywise mocks Bill by appearing as Georgie, calling to him from the sewers. The monster clown almost draws Bill in. As he rides away, he notices a young man named Dean, Luke Rosler, whom the gang had seen at the restaurant because he enjoys Richie's stand-up routine. Dean has also recently seen Pennywise after Bill mentioned it. He gives Dean strict orders to get himself and his family out of Derry as soon as possible. Ben receives an old yearbook page on which Bev was the sole author. He is haunted by a childhood flashback in which Pennywise took on Bev's form to mock Ben for his weight, as Pennywise knew Ben loved Bev and still harbors feelings for her. Her form's head caught fire as Ben hid in a locker, only to find Pennywise inside with him. Eddie visits the pharmacy to pick up his medications. Mr. Keen, Joe Bostic, and Greta, Juno Rinaldi, are still employed there. Before being haunted by Pennywise in the form of his mother being attacked by the leper, Eddie obtains an inhaler, Javier Botet. Henry assassinates a guard and flees the institution. He tracks down the losers and stabs Eddie in the cheek. He manages to pull the knife out and stab Henry in the chest, albeit fatally, before fleeing to his friends for assistance. However, Henry escapes before being apprehended. Bill sees the message "The fun is just beginning" written in another Pennywise haunting, which is what Dean said to Richie at the restaurant, itself a line from Richie's stand-up routine. Bill realizes Pennywise is referring to Dean and goes to a carnival to save him after learning he will be there. Dean thinks Bill is a crazy weirdo when he follows him into a hall of mirrors. Pennywise, with his long tongue and razor-sharp teeth, then finds the two. Pennywise breaks through first and brutally attacks Dean, blocking Bill's view. Bill can do nothing but watch in horror as he fails to save the boy. Mike is in the library when Henry discovers him and assaults him. Not long after, Richie arrives and stabs Henry in the back of the head. Richie vomits as a result of this. Bill gathers his friends and vows to kill IT himself. His friends gather their artifacts and join him at the Neibolt house for the final confrontation with the evil entity. While there, they enter Pennywise's lair and begin the ritual with the pottery. Bev's poem, Ben's yearbook page, Richie's token, Eddie's inhaler, the boat Bill helped build with Georgie, and a rock Mike recovered from their rock war with the Bowers gang are among the losers' artifacts. The deadlights appear and sink into the pottery with the artifacts, but just as everything appears to be working, a red balloon appears, revealing Pennywise. He confronts the losers once more in his true form, as a monster spider with a clown face, and expresses his longing to see them. Mike then reveals that the ritual never worked, and the tribe who tried it on Pennywise were all killed. With more nightmare visions, he divides the losers, including one of Stanley's severed head as a spider. Eddie and Richie are placed in a situation similar to when they were children, as Pennywise places 3 doors labeled scary, very scary, and not scary at all for them to walk through. They see Betty Ripsom's severed half-body, as well as a small Pomeranian that transforms into a monster. Meanwhile, Ben and Bev are separated and trapped, and Pennywise attempts to kill Ben by having him sink into the earth, while Bev is trapped in an illusion of a bathroom stall where he is harassed by Mr. Keen, Greta, Henry, and her own father. Bev fights back against the visions and saves Ben from the sinking ship, and she realizes he is the one who wrote her the poem, which he recited as he was dying. Bill is stuck in what appears to be his childhood basement. He sees his younger self conversing with Georgie, and the image of the little boy blames Bill for lying on the day he died, because Bill pretended to be sick so he wouldn't go out to play with Georgie in the rain. Bill had been haunted by this for years, and Pennywise knew he blamed himself. Young Bill takes a nail gun to his adult self, but adult Bill forgives himself and shoots the apparition instead. The losers get close enough to Pennywise to fight him, with Eddie summoning the courage to strike Pennywise himself. Pennywise impales Eddie with one of his talons as he runs to Richie. The losers try to find a way out, and they reason that because Pennywise is a spider, he can shrink himself to pursue them. They quickly realize that forcing him to believe he is small is the only way to make him small enough to defeat him. Before Pennywise shrinks and shrivels into a powerless shell of his former self, they begin to yell at him and call out all of his otherwise harmless forms. This allows the losers to extract his heart from his chest and crush it, effectively destroying him. Around them, the lair begins to crumble and collapse. Richie attempts to free Eddie, but he is already dead. The losers flee the house as it collapses on itself. The remaining 5 go to the quarry where they all used to swim as kids. They think about Eddie and how he would have despised it because it is so filthy. Richie then begins to cry for his friend who has died, and the others console him. Ben and Bev kiss as they continue to swim. They later walk home and see their reflections in a window, as well as their childhood selves, Eddie and Stanley. In one final flashback, the group is riding their bikes home as kids. Later on, Bill returned to writing, and he believes his endings are improving. He talks on the phone with Mike, who is considering traveling around the world for the first time. They express their feelings for one another, and Mike mentions a letter that all of the losers have been receiving. Bill discovers his letter and discovers that it was written by Stanley before his suicide. Over a small montage of the other losers in the present, we hear his voice reading the letter. Ben and Bev are now dating, while Richie visits a bridge where he carved his and Eddie's initials, revealing his feelings for him. According to Stanley's letter, he knew he'd never be brave enough to face Pennywise again, so he removed himself from the equation to give his friends a chance to honor him, giving them the strength to fight it. He was proven correct. Mike drives away and finally leaves Derry at the end of the film. Thanks for watching this video. Subscribe for more videos.